Okay, can everyone hear me? We're all good? Okay, so yeah, it's just really great. There's so many opportunities coming on, and then I see Rabbi House here, so don't forget that Rabbi House has a class tomorrow at 7 o'clock. So there's just so many things going on right now, and aren't we lucky that some of this can be recorded and other things can be watched later and so on. So that really is an exciting time for us to be able to learn together. And you know, high holidays are coming, and I wanted to share again with all of you that, you know, I've made a challenge, and I've been talking with a lot of folks about this challenge. So I'm going to share the 90 days of positivity with all of you guys so that you can, you know, hopefully join us for that. Let me see here. Here it is. I'm sharing with you this screen, and you can see that, oh, that's interesting. You know, 90 days to becoming a more positive person. You know, the first one is going to be 90 days of commitment to developing a positive, exciting, and enthusiastic attitude. Number 2, take a few minutes every day and give yourself a pep talk about becoming a more positive, dynamic person. 3, take a few minutes every day and dream how great it is to be totally positive and how wonderful it is to be successful and happy. 4, go and add a positive attitude to your work environment. 5, don't say anything negative, critical about anyone for the next 30 days. I'm 3 days in it, and I started my count again today. Shalom that I should speak about anyone, but I, you know, with all the politics going on, you just need to turn on the news for 1 minute. Okay, look for everyone's good qualities. 7, spend time each week reading a biography of successful persons you respect and admire. Tomorrow I'm going to put on Facebook so we can start sharing. I started a biography on Yitzhak Rabin, and it was printed before his assassination, so it's actually an interesting little time capsule. Make time to be with your family and have fun together. Start making a list of all the things you're thankful for: health, spouse, children, opportunity, etc. Every day, tell someone other than your family you love, appreciate, and admire them. I made it. I was able to do that today. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. I know a lot of folks are you know, reaching out to me about that if you have any questions about that, but I'm pushing that so hard because I do believe, and I shared with you all last week that, or Friday, I believe it is that what's so important is that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people that are not in great spots. There's a lot of depression, a lot of drug and alcohol abuse, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of stuff going on right now. And these aren't things that, it's not about just get positive and they'll go away. The idea here is that if we are positive, we'll be able to see when people are in need. That's the difference. So if we're able to see when people are in need, then we can help that way. And the best way for us to be able to see when others are in need is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. So that is one way in which to do that, is to do this 90-day challenge. So we're a couple of days in it, and the idea is that after the high holidays, we would all be complete. So join me in that. Now we're going to talk about Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av, what is Tu B'Av? Well, I wanted to just kind of give you, today is actually a very special day, and we're going to talk about love, but love is not just as an emotional expression of feeling, is that we all are aware that it's much more than that. And this holiday, which you can call, you know, the Jewish Sweethearts Day, or some people call it, you know, like the Jewish Valentine's Day, and it's taken on a new kind of energy over the course of the past couple of decades, because in Israel, it really is taken on kind of the Valentine's Day that we experience here in the United States. But we're going to look a little bit at the history, but we won't spend a lot of time on that, because I think what's important is the idea of exploring what does love mean? What is love? We all are aware that just a few days ago in Tisha B'Av, we spent time looking at really sinat chinam, or baseless hatred, or hate, this idea that really destroyed the temple. We are all aware of the destructive nature of hate and anger and all of these negative emotions, and we see that, and we, in a sense, commemorate a lot of that and its negative impact in the world on Tisha B'Av. And right next to it, we look at Tu B'Av. Now, Tu is just 2 Hebrew letters that come together. You might know it from Tu B'Shvat, the Tu, or the Tet Vav. literally just means 15. It's a way like you would the character is 1-5. That's what it looks like in Hebrew. So 2 is just how you say it. So this is Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. And if you go out, you'll see the full moon because we're right smack dab in the middle of the month of Av, 2 months prior to Tishrei, which will be the high holidays. So we are right in the middle of the summer, and we are looking at this holiday as a way to kind of offset all of the negativity around Tisha B'Av. So I just wanted to share, I met Leah today on the English date, my beautiful bride, August 4th. I met her 8 years ago today. And it was really an interesting story, and I'm going to share because it's important that we kind of always see in context what it is that we are really talking about, and what is love, and what is connection, and how we deal with that, and how we are open to new ways in which to express love and express connection. And we're going to see through some texts how that works. Well, interestingly enough, as many of you know, Leah's grew up in a different way than I grew up. She grew up in a very religious home, a very religious household. And when Tisha B'Av came around, there is a bad omen to do things. And in our home, you know, my mom will tell you the story, but I'll tell it for you right now, is that you don't go swimming during this time. It's a bad omen. If you go swimming right now during the Tisha B'Av, or this mourning period up to Tisha B'Av, which was last week, it is a bad omen. You don't want to go out and tempt fate, right? So in her and Leah, when we met on the phone. We met through a mutual friend. And she said, I don't want to meet you during this time period. I'd like to meet you afterwards. And so we waited a couple of weeks, and then it fell out that that was August 4th of 2012. And so that's how we ended up meeting. But I want to take a large step back, is that what we're going to look at is different aspects of love. And one of the big aspects of love is being open and trying to see the importance of the other. What do I mean by that? Many of you know that I worked for the Jewish Federation, and working for the Jewish Federation, I was a fundraiser, and I spent a lot of time doing fundraising. But one gentleman that I met, and I'm still friends today, he was a Chabad rabbi. Now, if you know anything about the Jewish world, conservative, Reform, Orthodox, Chabad, a lot of us don't play in the same sandbox. We tend to be oppositional towards each other. And I met this gentleman who was a Chabad rabbi, and we hit it off, and he invited me to his house, and he had a lot of respect for me as a conservative rabbi, which is really, really interesting, because that's not always the case. There's always a mutual respect, but we really appreciated each other, and we really got along, and we really tried to see each other's viewpoint. And that was pretty exciting. So I spent a lot of time, and we became very, very close. One of my dearest friends today. One of his wife's best friends happened to be Leah, and that's how we met. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up because where we find love is always a unique story. If you look at your life and look at the true loves of your life, there's a story there, right? There's always going to be a story there. It's not going to be, and even if you tried to tell the story, you wouldn't be able to capture all of the beauty that was that story. I know Don told me the great love of his life, and I've heard that story a couple of times now, and it's just each time I hear more depth and more beauty in the story that was his marriage that started so many years ago. And each and every one of us here has a story about love. And so right now you should be thinking about your own story of love, or your own great love of your life, whether it's something that is alive, is something that, we remember, right? We all remember our great loves. So the important aspect here is that we remember these connections. So we're going to look at Tu B'Av, we're going to look at love, we're going to look at how our tradition looks at love, and we're going to look at the importance of story, look at the importance of connection. Because if you've noticed right now, it really isn't these passionate things. It is a result. The passion is a result of these meetings. So we'll look at some of this. Okay, are we ready? So let's look at where, thank you for that intro. I just wanted to brag to you guys that tonight's our anniversary. And Leah said that, she said that I should knock on the front door like I did 8 years ago and ask her out on a date. And I said, where are we gonna go? There's nowhere to go. And she's like, we can go on a walk. Easiest first date. Okay, so here we go. I gotta share this screen. Sorry, I'm stalling right now. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, perfect. Perfect. I just need to move this screen a little bit over here. Thanks for the patience here. Love is not a feeling. We're in Tu B'Av, 5780. 5781 is coming very, very quickly. Mishnah Ta'anit. This is the time in which the fast. Why would it be here? Why are we talking about Tu B'Av in the Mosechet, or I should say the rabbinic literature that discusses fasts? Because they're discussing in the context of what we're about to talk about tonight. They're talking about Tisha B'Av. They're talking about the fast. So if you look in Ta'anit, which literally means fast, you will start to find the discussion moving quickly to this discussion of love, what we're talking about here. What does it say? And I'm going to read the English. The Hebrew's there for us to look at if we need some insight into, but the English is generally a pretty good translation. Section 1, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, there were no days of joy in Israel greater than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. These are the best days, Yom Kippur and the 15th of Av, right? Now, if you grew up like me, and I dreaded Yom Kippur, who wants to fast, right? It's not really an exciting day. But here it's saying that these are the days of great joy. Section 2. On these days, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out and borrow white garments in order not to shame anyone who had none. In other words, that you would borrow the garments of somebody else. We'll look at it more in depth in the Gemara, that they would borrow so that a rich person would borrow from a poor person and a poor from a rich, so that nobody would be revealed or shamed that they were unable to afford a white garment. All these garments required immersion, meaning they needed to go into a mikvah. The daughters of Jerusalem came out and danced in the vineyards. What would they say? Young man, lift up your eyes and see what you choose for yourself. Do not set your eyes on beauty, but set your eyes on the family. So this was some kind of marriage ritual. What are you doing? You're not looking for beauty. What's the important piece about relationships and love and what we're talking about is about the family. It's about the family. Do not set your eyes on beauty, but set on the family. The idea here is that what should be our major push in developing and creating relationships that have depth and weight, it should be about the family that we will create. The principles that we're looking for are about the family that we create, not on our eyes, not on our interest in beauty. And so keep that in mind when we're talking about here, is that what is the most important principle? Judaism is based on principles. It's called a klal gadol. Klal gadol. What is the major principle that guides each and every one of you personally? Personally, what are the principles that guide you? What are your values, in other words? Kindness, tolerance, love. What are the values? In this case, the value is, it's not about beauty. It's not after what we lust. It's not after what we learn in the Shema that we wear our tzitzit so that we don't lust after our eyes. It is about what it is that we are going to build, right? And what do we build here is the family. This is it's not a coincidence, right, that they're talking about building a family after what? Tisha B'Av is discussing the destruction of the Jewish people. How do you build the Jewish people? Through family. Ta'anit, again, 30b, this is in the Gemara. And look at what this says. So the Mishnah taught, and we looked at what the Mishnah is. We literally looked at the Mishnah just now. Now we're going to look at what the later generation says about this. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said, There were no days as happy for the Jewish people as the 15th of Av and as Yom Kippur, right? So they're taking this statement that we just read, and what does the Gemara ask? What's the question that the Gemara asks of this particular statement? Granted, Yom Kippur is a day of joy because it has the elements of pardon and forgiveness. And moreover, it is on the day on which the last pair of tablets were given. So why is it, right, that Tisha B'Av or Tu B'Av is as joyous as well? It's a given because it is a day in which we express love. So the question that the Gemara asks is, why is it? It's clear. It's clear that Tu B'Av is important because it's a day of joy, because, or a day of happiness as it's translated here, because we talk about love, because we talk about connection, because we talk about literally these people going out and developing family. That's the context of Tu B'Av and love. That's the history. That's the history here that we're talking about, is that after the destruction of the temple, we look at Tu B'Av and that how do you express love with other people, with God? It's through connection. It's through connection. Okay, so let's look at Tani later on in this, 31a, and these are just the page numbers. So a little bit further down it goes into, and I spared you, don't worry, I spared you a lot of stuff so we can get into some of the more exciting stuff. Any questions right now? I don't want to just speak at you. Any questions, any thoughts, considerations? Tov, I can't see everyone, so because I have this on screen share. So let's look at the Mishnah taught. As on them, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out in white clothes. So we're repeating, right? They would go out in white clothes, and on the 15th of Av, they would go out to the vineyards and dance. The sages taught this tradition in greater detail. So we're going to give you a little bit of an insight about what this actual ritual was. The daughter of the king borrows white garments from the daughters of the high priest. The daughters of the high priest borrow from the daughters of the deputy high priest. The daughters of the deputy high priest borrows from the daughters of the priests anointed for war, i.e. the priests who would read verses of Torah and address the army as they prepared for battle. The daughter of the priests anointed for war borrows from the daughters of a common priest, and all the Jewish people borrow from each other. Why would they all borrow garments? They did this so as not to embarrass one who did not have her own white garment. So here, even before we go out into the field and express ways in which to connect and develop family, the act of love here, the act of love is one in which we are thinking and we are concerned about the other's appearance, not with the white garment, but that they shouldn't feel shame. That true love, and think about this, is that you put the other person's feelings ahead of yourself. Now, if we were to make a list of major values about what is important for any relationship or one that is truly going to express love, isn't that one that we could all agree on? That you put the other's feelings first, that you put the other person's experience ahead of your own, that we're looking out and looking out for the other's needs. Look at this. It's really interesting because the daughter of the king borrows, and just on the side, borrows from the high priest, the daughter of the high priest from the deputy high. Are these people, on some of them, that would even interact? And not necessarily. They wouldn't necessarily act. That you do really have in our tradition, and certainly at the time, historically speaking, when this was going on, not always were the priests speaking with the king, were these different aspects of the society speaking with each other. And yet, when it comes to the development of family, when it comes to the development of love, that comes first. The idea of coming together so that we can build the Jewish people. Okay, so that's the Gemara. So that's just the contextual history of why we do Tu B'Av. There's 6 more other places that they go into different conversations. I spared you that, but just trust me when I say that this is the root of Tu B'Av comes from what we just read. That the maidens would go into the field and dress in white and dance in the vineyard, and people would interact with each other that way. So let's look at where our tradition really focuses in on love And this is right from the start. This isn't a conversation about love between romantic love. Right out of the gate, it says, you shall not take, I'm here. Does everyone follow me? I'm sorry. I feel like it's always very hard to see. Everyone's with me? Okay. All right. Didn't lose anyone. Okay. Ask questions if you have any questions, because I just go into my own little world. Okay. Tov. Leviticus 19, this is the holiness code, okay? And it says, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord, right? Ve'ahavta l'reacha chamocha, ani Hashem. That verse we know. I posted it on Facebook today. We're getting started. I thank you for those who liked it, and it's great. It's within the context of you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen, right? That when you have a feeling of negative feeling towards someone, you're reminded to love the fellow as yourself. I am God. And anytime that you say, I am Hashem here, it's really a stamp. It's, pay attention. But let's look at what the commentaries are on this, because if one of my first questions is that how do you know that somebody likes themselves? What if they don't like themselves, right? You can have a whole series of questions. Who is to decide whether or not somebody really feels as though they like themselves more than somebody else, or so on and so forth? So it brings up a whole bunch of questions. But let's look within the Tanakh itself. In Shmuel 18:1, what does it say? When David finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan's soul became bound up with the soul of David. Jonathan loved David as himself. It is it's not necessarily about that you should love your neighbor like yourself, meaning that you love yourself so much and that's how you should love the other person. It just is an expression, at least within the commentary, at least within the Tanakh. If you look, Jonathan loved David as himself, meaning that there was a true bond. There was a true connection. They became bound up with the soul of David, that there is a connection. There is a togetherness. And if you look at the Hebrew, it says benefesh. Nefesh always in the Tanakh, it doesn't literally mean soul, it means person. It later becomes soul, but in the Tanakh, it literally means just a person. That, hey, you're a nefesh, you're a person. They didn't distinguish between, that comes later philosophically, they didn't distinguish between your soul and your body. You just were a soul. You were a human being. It is that they are connected, not that they are connected spiritually or between some kind of soulmates. That's not what it is. It's that they truly connect as other people. In other words, that two things. For David, I want us to look at it. For David and Jonathan, the connection is that, have you ever met somewhere you just get along and it's very easy to get along, right? There are people that it's much easier to get along. That was what they're talking when they're talking about being bound up, is that it was easier for them to really get along. There are people that we can love, right? Any parents that's had challenges with their kids, at times maybe it's more difficult to find that love, right? It can be more challenging to find that love. That doesn't mean you don't love them. It just means that relationship can be a little more challenging at times. And then that's when we look up at Leviticus 19, you shall not take vengeance or bear grudge against the other. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. It is when in those places that we need to be commanded to see the other from the viewpoint of love. Later on, we look at Avot, and many of us have been studying Pirkei Avot over the course of the past couple of months, and look at what it says. All the love that depends on something, when these things cease, the love ceases, and all love that does not depend on anything will never cease. What is an example that depends on something? Such was the love of Amnon and Tamar. And what is an example of love that did not depend on anything? Such was the love of David and Jonathan. What are these two cases? If you remember, what does Amnon do? He has a lust for Tamar. It's actually his half-sister. He has a real desire for her. He wants her more than anything. So what does he do? He has his way with her. He literally rapes her, and that's what it is. And so there is no sugarcoating that. That was dependent on his lust. It was dependent on her giving him something, right? We all understand that it's dependent on power. It's dependent on, in his case, the power and the need to dominate and the need to fulfill a need within him. And it says in Pirkei Avot, and they're very, very clear on this, that that's an example that when you depend on something, once you've exhausted that something, the love is gone. And what's an example of love that did not depend on anything? It was just a love that is David and Jonathan. If we look back at what we studied, is that they were connected. They were connected, and if you look at what it says right here, they were bound up with the soul of David, that they were together. They understood each other. The ideal here is to, right, be bound together, to understand the needs, thoughts, and desires of the other person, to put the other person first, their considerations, and so on. In the case of Amnon, he put his needs before Tamar. And when you have that something that your needs need to be met, what ends up happening? It doesn't work out.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I don't see that as love.
Uh-huh.
And secondly, I don't see Tamar giving it to him. He took it.
He took it.
That's not good. I don't see that as an example of love.
Yeah. So what? So the question. Exactly. Go ahead. Sorry.
My thoughts exactly.
Right. So why would the rabbis say? Why would let's go back into the text. It's a really good question. Let's go back into the text and look, because that's an important question. All love that depends on something. What is an example of love that depends on something? Such was the love of Amnon for Tamar. What are the rabbis trying to say? Any thoughts on that then? If we believe, right, if we believe that that's not love, what are the rabbis trying to say that it is? What are they trying to get across here? That Amnon, from our sensibilities, we're looking at, that's not love, that is power. Like I said, it's dominance, it's right. So what are the rabbis trying to get across then?
It was love in Amnon's point of view, but no, it really wasn't love. That's the way I see it right now, anyway.
Right. So, and I think that's an important point. How, in this case, right, it's the extreme, right? That's definitely the extreme. Right. We all agree that that's the extreme, right? We're not, right. So the extreme here is that here is a guy that is only focused on him. He thinks it's love. He thinks it's right. He's confusing the lust, dominance, power, control, anger, hate. Right. And you could make an argument that he actually hated her. Right. There was no love. Right. Remember that in Hebrew, hate is really just the absence of love. So what really was the issue here then is, at least that I'm hearing us kind of express right now, is that it wasn't love, but that it was in his own mind. In his own mind, this was love. And how mistaken is he? And how real did it seem to him? And how real is it that it seems to us at times, right? Not barring the extreme, but how real does it seem to us at times that we're expressing love with loving others, and maybe we're not? Maybe we're not.
I don't know, maybe sometimes when we're overprotective of people and we're kind of choking them with love. That's not really love.
Right? The idea of the helicopter parent. Anyone seen one of these things? Right?
See what?
A helicopter parent?
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like love.
I think they're saying that love, just real love is. There is no, it's ethereal. It's not defined, but it's eternal. And that that this other example is something that it's really not love. It's like you said, it's lust, it's whatever. And the only way to really determine it is at the end. Is it still there? It's this intangible, this feeling, this connection that these two have, that their nepheches were together. And that obviously with Amar and Tamar, where that wasn't real. And so to really recognize what's true, it's not definable. It's just a feeling. You just know. It just is. And so between the two of them, it wasn't there. But between Jonathan and David, it was icing. It was cake. It was delicious. And it just was. It's a beautiful thought.
Yeah, I like that idea too, that it's lasting, right? After the, even after everything, it's still lasting, it's eternal. I like that. Interestingly enough, just on the side, but both of these cases are not romantic love. Right? We're talking about love here that's not romantic. I know there's some people that say David and Jonathan and so on, but it's not romantic love. So that's just on the side. Tov. All right, good. Interrupt me anytime. I always hear me.
I just also want to add that throughout my affiliation with community, that's kind of the same feelings that David and Jonathan have, that at some level CBS and my nefesh is true love. And that it's not necessarily individuals, it's community. It's that feeling of comfort of being at a minyan or being at a Shiva minyan. And you can feel the community, you can feel the love in the room. You can feel the love at a Tu B'Av presentation by you, Rabbi, that this is also that intangible, that there's a certain level of community that brings out that love. And what a perfect day to do that on Tu B'Av.
Amen. Amen. And you can't go wrong with a little grandchild like that with the bow on her head. I love it.
Well, it can't hurt.
Tov. All right. Oh my gosh, guys, time is going. I want to get to the okay, here we go. Ready? Sifre, Kedoshim is Sifra. I'm sorry. Sifra is the Midrash on Leviticus. The Midrash on Leviticus. And let's look at the English. You shall not take revenge and you shall not bear a grudge against the children of your people. You may take revenge of and bear a grudge against other idolaters, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so that's the key, right? We're talking about loving your neighbor as yourself. Notice that the rabbis are hooked on that phrase. When we talk about love, we always end up with this phrase. What's the phrase again? And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The rabbis are very focused on it. Remember, we talked about principles, klal gadol, the major guiding principle of you, of the person, of the tradition. What is it? Rabbi Akiva says this is an all-embracing principle in the Torah. What's the all-embracing principle? Love. You shall love the neighbor as yourself. You shall love other people as yourself. That is the guiding principle. You all know the story, right? That somebody says, teach me, Judaism goes to Hillel, teach me on one foot, that which is hateful to you, do not do to others, right? That's what it is. That klal gadol, what is the most important aspect? And for Rabbi Akiva, of course, it is the all-embracing, or klal gadol, is love. Now, here's an interesting thing. And this is where the conversation can get very, very nuanced, but I think it's important for us to look at. We would all agree, right? The summer of love was 1969. 69? 68?
67.
67? Oh, did I just date some of you? I am so sorry.
But that's because
like
69 is when I married your father.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm going to leave that alone. Okay. So in any event, right, that what's the guiding principle? Love is everything. Maybe you've heard that, right? Maybe you've heard when it all boils down to love in the end, right? What is the major principle that guides, you know, even in our tradition, right, the most important principle you could argue is chesed, which could be translated as loving kindness. So we all understand the importance of love. For Rabbi Akiva, this is the all-embracing principle. When it all boils down to one thing, it boils down to love. But Ben Azai says, if you look at Breshit 5:1, don't worry, I have it for you. This is the numeration of the generations of Adam. This is an even greater principle. What is the numerations of the generations of Adam? Don't worry, I have it for you. Look at this. This is for him what the most important principle is. And I don't think it's semantics. This is the record of Adam's line. When God created a man, he created him in the likeness of God. Bidumot Elohim asa'oto. He made him in the image of God. These are two opposing views. What's the most important principle that we should be guiding our life? Love. For Ben Azai, what is the most important guiding principle? To see the other person as a creation of God. What do you think is the most important principle? Is it just a guiding principle of love, which comes from inside, obviously, that we should love others as though as we love our neighbors, we should love our neighbors as though we love ourselves? Or does love come even before? You can't have love, at least in my argument about what Ben Azai is saying, is that you can't love somebody, you can't love your neighbor, you can't love yourself if you don't see that you were created in the image of God. In other words, you have a spark of divinity. In other words, you matter in this world. Does everyone understand the argument here? It's an important argument. It's an important way in which we view the world. A lot of stuff that we taught when I was at Beit Tshuva was a lot of this idea is that if you don't see yourself as though you are created in the image of God and that you matter, nothing else will matter. You can't love anyone. There's no way you can love your neighbor because you don't see yourself as being worthy of love, because you don't see yourself as being created in the image of God. Now, I don't want to get into the philosophical understanding of God, but we can all agree in the principle that each human life, I hope we can agree on this, that each human life has enormous value and matters. And that's the principle that is guiding. Does everyone see the argument here? And this is a very big argument, at least in our tradition, about what really is the core, what is the root of the Klal Gadol, or the most important general principle that should guide all of our lives. In other words, when you wake up in the morning, what is the thing that guides you? Is it love, or is it that you as a human being have total worth and value, therefore so does our neighbor, so do you? Yeah.
You can't, it sounds like you can't have love without respect. And if we're all created in the image of God, we have to respect each other. And in any relationship, if you're going to have love, you have to have respect for each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, how do you love somebody if you don't see their value? And this is where I would actually agree probably more with Ben Azai, is that how do you truly love another individual unless you believe that their being matters? So, okay. Man, time flies. You guys having fun? All right, let's go back to this. Mishnah Torah, who's this? This is the Rambam, Maimonides, 12th century, 12th, 13th century. I just got confused. Early 13th century Spain. Well, he'll end up in Egypt and so on, but he's the real deal. So what does he say? It's mandatory upon every man to love each and every one of Israel, even as he loves his own self. Okay. Now it's gotten a little bigger, right? It's not just your neighbor. It's not just the person next to you. Notice that the subtle commentary right now. Now it's every Yidden, every Jew you're to love. It's not just the Jew next to you or the person next to you, if we want to look at it in more modern terms. Now it's everything. And it's a subtle but important distinction. So it's mandatory now, right? And it literally says mitzvah al kol adam, each and every person. It is a mitzvah for you. It's a commandment that you should love each and every one of Israel, even as he loves his own self. For it is said, but thou shalt love the neighbor as yourself. So now we have a couple of different commentaries coming on this, right? That it's a general principle, that this should be the guiding way in which I do, that Jonathan, that there's this connection, that I'm seeing the soul and that I'm connected with the other person. And now the Rambam has said it's a commandment. Now it's a mitzvah. Now we're using the language, it's even stronger, right? He literally uses the word mitzvah. That you should love the neighbor as yourself. One is therefore obliged to speak in praise of his neighbor and to be considerate of his money, even as he is considerate of his own money or desire to preserve his own honor. So he's speaking to the negative part of me that says, well, how am I supposed to love the person as myself? Well, here I'm going to give you a couple of examples when it's really clear where you put yourself first. What's the best one? Money, right? It's without a doubt that when we start discussing money, who puts who first, right? We always put ourselves first, right? If we're talking about, hey, could you make a donation to CBS? We really could use your help this year, right? All of a sudden, people start to get a little interested in, well, I got to pay for this and that, right? So it's a way in which to get into the mind of somebody to see how they will behave. Those are the two ways, money and honor. Everyone wants to be respected, right? There's a whole thing, it's just like, I need to have respect, gain respect. Don't disrespect me. That there was somehow, right? Respect is and honor is really, really important, right? If someone feels as though they're dishonored, right? These are examples of how we are very, very clear on how we feel about something. So we should put, at least in Rambam's understanding, we should put that example and put the other person's consideration, other person's experience and thought ahead, even when it comes to these two cases of money and honor. And then they're going to quote, he quotes, but whosoever glorifies himself and disgraces his neighbor has no share in the world to come. The love for the proselyte or the convert who came and embraced the protection beneath the wings of the Shekhinah. So sorry, I don't know why I think that was a mistake on my end. But if you're asking the question, right, how is it that I can tell whether or not I truly am loving my neighbor as myself? Do I put their monetary concerns and their honor at a high level as though I would be putting my own? And that is a great test to see. Right? How many of us are really, outside of Ken, who's an accountant on this chat, who's putting other people's money ahead of their own? Who's putting other people's honor ahead of their own? And I think it's really good. And if we're really honest with ourselves, it's a great test. It's a wonderful, wonderful test. Genesis 29:20. So now we're going to move on. We're getting late in the hour. We're going to move on to romantic love. And I wanted to just share this because our tradition isn't always just about a halachic. Oftentimes we get into the legalism and it can get very removed from what is love and how we should behave and how it can get very philosophical. And I wanted to just spend a couple of moments as the hour runs late is to look at some of the romantic love that we are not as a tradition unaware of the romantic love piece. And it's written right in our Torah itself. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Because of his love, he was willing to work. Look, we all remember the story, right? He works an enormous amount of time and is tricked, and because he loves the younger daughter, right? Leah and Rachel, and the younger. I don't want to get into all that stuff because it's really fascinating, but the younger always in Breshit always seems to come out on top. And in this case, the younger sibling is loved more than the older sibling. But he works. It seemed as though only a little bit of time to him. 7 years went fast because of his love. Has anyone, it reminds me of that young love that maybe we've all had, that all of a sudden that first time you fall in love and the first time that you experience another person, and I guess they love you back, right? You need to have the person love you back, because that's definitely special. There's nothing worse than loving someone and they don't love you back, right? So, but they love you back. And for him, it was but yet a moment in time. And 14 years, a very, very lengthy time. And but he was willing to do that, to be with her in totality, because of the love. So here love is described as something that is timeless, as Ken pointed out. It's described as something that really brings out a part of somebody that they're willing to go above and beyond. And I just love that about the romantic love, is that it brings something out of us. It brings something that isn't just about, what we should or shouldn't do, what's appropriate and not appropriate, but it brings out that element of emotion, that element of the untangible. And oftentimes, if we look at Yehuda Halevi, this was a poet. He's known for his philosophical works, but he was also a poet. And, he's made it into our prayer book, but he writes, he's a Spanish, in the 12th century, Spanish Jewish rabbi, poet, philosopher. And look at this, he writes this poem, and it's a beautiful poem. But people later on say they're uncomfortable with some of the imagery here, but it really is a love poem, and it is a love poem. It's not a love story between God and Israel. It really is a love poem. At this time, this was considered to be the golden age of Spanish Jewish life, or Spanish or Jewish poetry. And if you were anybody who was anybody, anyone who was a rabbi was writing poetry at this time. And you see it in our prayer book. They're going all out on this stuff, and it was really a sign of the times. It was an enlightened period, and he writes this, and look at this. This is I just think it's beautiful. My sweetheart's dainty lips, and this is from our rabbis, and I want to just kind of point out that this is something that we should celebrate. I think is that taking a time, that we're not just focused on any one thing, that our job is our job and our hobbies are our hobbies, but that we are people who are able to kind of explore different aspects. And I've always loved this about this time period is that rabbis weren't just about Jewish law and studying Gemara, but they were also about poetry and art. So what does he say? He says, my sweetheart's dainty lips are red, with ruby crimson overspread. Her teeth are like a string of pearls, down her neck, her clustering curls. In ebony hue, vie with the night, and over her features dances light. The twinkling stars enthroned above are sisters to my dearest love. We men should count in joy complete to lay our service at her feet. But oh, what rapture is her kiss, a forecast 'tis of heavenly bliss. And what drives this? What drives somebody to write something like this? And certainly, I think in the end, this is the argument between Rabbi Akiva and Ben Asai, is that you have this, you can see that the person matters, that you can see that the person really, at least in my opinion, that when you are able to truly see another person and write poetry beautiful like that, it's because you see that person truly is created in the image of God. And I think that to me is the ideal, because many of us struggle with seeing the image of God in other people. So, okay, here we go. Eric Fromm, and this is what we're gonna wrap up with this, because this is his commentary on Ve'ahavta l'reacha chamocha. that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And this is a modern understanding, and this is a modern commentary on it. The object of love. Oh, so Erich Fromm, of course, was a German thinker, and was at the time really was right in the middle of at the height of, I think, his thinking was during the Holocaust. But what does he write? The objects of love. Love is not primarily a relationship to a specific person. It is an attitude, an orientation of character which determines the relatedness of a person to the world as a whole, not towards one object of love. So this would be the Jonathan and David. This would be the that train of thought. If a person loves only one other person and is indifferent to the rest of his fellow men, his love is not love, but a symbiotic attachment or an enlarged egotism, right? You see how it kind of fits into the Tamar story a little bit. Yet most people believe that love is constituted by the object, not by the faculty. Because one does not see that love is an activity, a power of the soul. One believes that all that is necessary to find is the right object, and that everything goes by itself afterwards, right? This is the short-sightedness of Amnon and Tamar. This attitude can be compared to that of a man who wants to paint, but who, instead of learning the art, claims that he has just to wait for the right object and that he will paint beautifully when he finds it. Great metaphor. If I truly love one person, I love all persons. I love the world. I love life. This is Ben Azzi, right? If I can say to somebody else, I love you, I must be able to say, I love you and everybody. I love through you the world. I love in you also myself. Saying that love is an orientation which refers to all and not to one does not imply, however, the idea that there are no differences between various types of love which depend on the kind of object which is loved. Is he a Jewish thinker or not? I mean, isn't that crazy? It's pretty cool. Brotherly love. And it's just so beautifully written too. So, but it's just, you can see it's rooted in our tradition. Brotherly love, the most fundamental kind of love, which underlies all types of love, is brotherly love, or human, between people. By this, I mean the sense of responsibility, care, respect, knowledge of any other human being, the wish to further his life. This is the kind of love the Bible speaks of when it says, love the neighbor as yourself. Brotherly love is love for all human beings. It is characterized by its very lack of exclusiveness. If I have developed a capacity for love, then I cannot help loving my brothers. In brotherly love, there is the experience of union with all men, of human solidarity, of human atonement. Brotherly love is based on the experience that we all are one. The differences in talents, intelligence, knowledge are negligible in comparison with the identity of the human core common to all men. In order to experience this identity, it is a necessity to penetrate from the periphery to the core. If I perceive in another person mainly the surface, I perceive mainly the differences, that which separates us. If I penetrate to the core, I perceive our identity, the fact of our brotherhood. This relatedness from center to center, instead of that from periphery to periphery, is central relatedness. Brotherly love is love between equals. But indeed, even as equals, we are not always equal. Inasmuch as we are humans, we are all in need of help. Today, I, tomorrow, you. But this need of help does not mean that this is one in helplessness, the all-powerful. Helplessness is a transitory condition. The ability to stand and walk on one's own feet is the permanent and common one. Yet love of the helpless one, love of the poor and the stranger are the beginning of brotherly love. To love one's flesh and blood is no achievement. The animal loves its young and cares for them. The helpless one loves his master since his life depends on him. The child loves his parents since he needs them. Only in the love of those who do not serve a purpose, love begins to unfold. Significantly in the Old Testament, our Tanakh, the central object of man's love is the poor, the stranger, the widow, and the orphan, and eventually the national enemy, the Egyptians and the Edomites. By having compassion for the helpless one, man begins to develop love for his brother, and in his love for himself, he also loves the one who is in need of help, the frail, insecure human being. Compassion implies the element of knowledge of identification. You know the heart of the stranger, says the Old Testament, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt, therefore love the stranger. In the end, what we're really talking about is just what Ben Azai was talking about, in my opinion, that if we truly want to express and understand love, it is by quite simply understanding the humanity of each other, that we were all created, at least as it says, B'Tselem Elohim, or as in the image of God. And from that spans everything else. I hope that that was helpful. I came in I try not to go over an hour just to be respectful of everyone's time and evening. So we hit it right on time. Any questions on this? Any thoughts on this? The most important part for us as we move forward, and the most healing way in which to combat sinat chionam, or baseless hatred, which is the most destructive aspect, as we learned last week, of humanity, is to truly see the godliness or the little spark of divinity in the other person. And in that way, then we can grow love. I challenge all of us to spend time. You know, I started off, with this, this challenge. Part of the challenge is it's not just about positivity. It's about looking and seeing the good qualities. If we can practice finding the good qualities, that's how we uncover the divine spark. Too much of our world is covered with negativity, and it's very hard to see the divinity in many people. It doesn't take a long time to spend any time on the news, and you can see a lot of negativity, and it's hard to find the good qualities in people. Our challenge today is to find the divine spark in each person and find the good qualities and hang on to it, and hang on to the good qualities. And look, we can focus on that for a little while. It's always there for us to go back to our negativity and looking at the poor qualities of people. So I hope that was helpful. If you want a copy of these sources, they're available. I just found, sorry that was a little lengthy at the end, the stuff with Eric Fromm, but I thought he captured everything in just a couple of paragraphs, the entire conversation of love, at least in the Jewish strain. So I want to wish you a Yom Tov, in the sense of it is Jewish Valentine's Day. Take a moment to tell someone that you appreciate them, that you love them, and you respect them and love, and you appreciate them. So I want to wish you just a wonderful evening. Any final thoughts? Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Hi, Robin. Hey, Mendelssohn's.
I tried to unmute you all. Hang on, sorry.